The trunk was never meant to be touched. Everyone in the Harrow household knew that. Children, servants, even the visitors who drifted through the grand rooms of the Tennessee estate in uneasy admiration. It sat in the attic beneath rafters stained by heat and time, its iron frame cold even in midsummer, its lock sealed so tightly it looked fused to the metal. For decades it absorbed silence the way iron absorbs heat. No one asked about it. No one dared. But in the autumn of 1859, during a renovation Silas Harrow had half-heartedly approved, 2 workers discovered the trunk while prying up warped boards. They called for the Harrow sons, thinking it might contain heirlooms from the family's earliest days. And so Cassian, the dutiful, measured eldest, and Jonah, restless and hungry for confrontation, climbed the creaking attic steps to inspect it. The moment they reached the trunk, a cloud of dust lifted like breath from a long sleeping creature. "Have you ever seen this before?" Jonah asked, kneeling beside it. "Never," Cassian murmured. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried a flicker of unease. "Which means Father won't want us near it." Yet neither withdrew. There was something magnetic about the iron box, something that hummed beneath the skin like a memory one isn't sure belongs to them. Jonah ran his hand over the lid. "It's older than the house." Cassian studied the warped metal lock, its surface pitted by age. If Father kept this hidden, he had a reason. Reason, Silas Harrow's favorite word. The pillar of his authority. He ruled by it, justified cruelty with it, demanded obedience under its banner. In town, men regarded him with a mixture of admiration and dread. On his land, he was closer to myth than man. Silas denied wrongdoing with such assurance that few dared to question him. His world functioned because he controlled every hinge, every ledger, every voice. But the trunk, untouched and unknown, hinted at something beyond his curated truth. "We should take it downstairs," Jonah said, already gripping one of the rusted handles. "No," Cassian snapped. "Put it back." Jonah raised an eyebrow. "You're afraid of an old box?" Cassian didn't answer. He wasn't afraid of the box. He was afraid of what Silas might do if he found out they had disturbed it. Below them, voices drifted up from the house, Mrs. Harrow calling for supper. The dull thud of a kitchen drawer. The distant clatter of pots. Familiar sounds, but they didn't ease the tension coiling inside the attic. Jonah tilted the trunk toward the window. Light struck the metal, revealing faint scratches near the hinges, as if someone had once tried to pry it open. Cassian froze. "Don't move it anymore." But Jonah had already leaned in to examine the marks. Someone didn't want this staying closed. Or Father didn't want it opened, Cassian said. They stared at one another, the weight of that possibility filling the dusty air. From the yard came the sharp crack of an overseer's command, followed by the dull echo of axes in the woodlot. The world outside continued with the brutal rhythm the Harrows enforced, a rhythm Silas had insisted would outlive him. Yet, in that moment, Jonah whispered what both brothers had started to suspect. This isn't just storage. It's a secret. Footsteps creaked on the staircase below, slow, purposeful, unmistakable. Cassian felt them before he heard them. His stomach dropped. Jonah's expression shifted. "Is that—" Silas Harrow appeared in the doorway. He filled the frame like a storm cloud, his face unreadable in the dim light. His gaze did not fall on his sons first. It went straight to the trunk, dragged into the open, disturbed, exposed. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. The cicadas outside quieted. Even the dust in the air seemed to suspend itself. Silas stepped forward, his boots sounding heavier than usual on the floorboards. "I gave no permission," he said, voice low, even, but carrying an undercurrent that made the attic feel colder. Cassian opened his mouth to explain, but Silas raised a hand. Not in anger, not yet. In something closer to fear. A silence gathered between them, taut as wire. Then Silas reached the trunk and placed his palm on its lid with a tremor so slight only Cassian noticed it. "Who?" Silas whispered. "Told you this belonged to you." The question hung there, sharp, strange, and far too revealing. And as Cassian glanced at Jonah, he sensed something that unsettled him far more than their father's anger. Silas had not expected the trunk to ever be found again, and from the way he looked at it, Cassian wondered if even he feared what might still be inside. Dinner that evening unfolded beneath the heavy chandelier in the Harrow dining room, its crystals catching the lamplight and scattering it across polished wood and silverware. The table was always set with rigid precision, an outward symbol of the order Silas Harrow demanded. But beneath that order something strained. Cassian felt it in the tightness of his mother's smile. Jonah sensed it in the silence stretching too long between courses. Even the servants moved with an unusual stiffness, as though the discovery in the attic had traveled through the floorboards and into their bones. Silas ate in brooding quiet, the muscles in his jaw working beneath the skin like gears grinding against one another. Cassian avoided his father's gaze, though he could feel it settle on him every few minutes, sharp as a drawn blade. Jonah, in contrast, studied Silas openly, as if searching for a crack in the man's iron facade. Mrs. Harrow finally ventured a comment about the weather, how early frosts might threaten the cotton yield. Silas answered with a curt nod, nothing more. Conversation wilted. The trunk's presence lingered among them like an unseen guest. After supper, Cassian slipped outside, needing air. The autumn night pressed cool against his skin, carrying the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. Lanterns flickered along the paths leading to the quarters, where the enslaved families settled into their harsh routines. Cassian heard murmurs, low, cautious, drifting through the dark. It wasn't unusual for Silas's name to pass between those whispers, but tonight the tone was different, almost fearful. Jonah joined him on the porch. "He's hiding something," he said, arms crossed as he leaned against a pillar. "And that trunk has everything to do with it." "We shouldn't have touched it," Cassian muttered. "We didn't open it." "Touching it was enough," Cassian said, thinking of Silas's face in the attic. Not anger, something deeper, older, more fragile. "I've never seen him look like that." Jonah exhaled sharply. "Maybe now we'll finally learn what everyone's been whispering about for years." Cassian stiffened. "What do you mean?" Jonah didn't answer at once. Instead, he glanced toward the quarters. "Ask anyone out there. They'll tell you stories. Strange ones. Disappearances. Nights when father rode out and came back at dawn with mud on his boots and eyes that wouldn't meet anyone else's. You've heard the rumors, Cassian." Cassian had, but he'd buried them with the same discipline his father demanded of every Harrow. Rumors were dangerous things. They had toppled families, ignited feuds, torn communities apart. Silas always said rumors thrived where weakness lived. And the Harrows, according to him, were not weak. A figure approached hesitantly from the path. It was Ruth, the housemaid, her apron still dusted with flour. She kept her gaze low as she reached the porch steps. "Beggin' pardon, Mr. Cassian." "Mr. Jonah," she said softly. "Your mother's asking for you." Jonah nodded, but Cassian noticed something. A tremor in Ruth's voice, a reluctance in her posture. She wasn't merely delivering a message. She was trying to stay away from the main house. "Ruth," Cassian said gently, "is something wrong?" She hesitated, her hands twisted in her apron. Her jaw trembled with words she seemed afraid to voice. "It ain't my place, sir," she whispered. Just be careful where you step these days." Jonah frowned. "What does that mean?" But Ruth backed away, shaking her head. "Nothing but nonsense talk. People get nervous when the season changes, that's all." She disappeared into the dark before either brother could question her further. Inside, the mood worsened. Mrs. Harrow's eyes darted anxiously between her sons and her husband. Silas stood near the fireplace, staring into the embers, as though deciphering something hidden within them. "Boys," he said finally, not looking up, "you will not return to the attic." Jonah scoffed under his breath, but Cassian sensed the warning beneath the words, something cold, like a threat softened by exhaustion. "Why was the trunk hidden?" Jonah asked boldly. Silas turned. His expression hardened, but his voice remained steady. "Because it contains things that belong to this family, long before either of you understood its weight. Do not question me again." Cassian stepped between them before Jonah could respond. The air felt brittle, charged. That night, unable to sleep, Cassian wandered the upstairs hallway, Lamplight flickered against portraits of stern ancestors, their painted eyes seeming to track him. Shadows pooled along the floor, thick as spilled ink. He paused at the attic door. Something creaked beyond it, soft, metallic, familiar. Cassian's breath caught. It was the sound of the trunk shifting, even though no one had gone near it since Silas dragged it back into the shadows. And in that faint, unsettling scrape, Cassian sensed not just movement, but memory stirring where it had long refused to die. Cassian didn't sleep the rest of that night. The house felt watchful, as if its walls remembered secrets its occupants had tried to forget. Long before dawn, he rose from bed and stood at the window overlooking the mist-soaked fields. Lanterns still burned near the quarters, faint flickers of movement passing between them, shadows shaped by exhaustion, duty, and something else he couldn't name. The wind carried a faint metallic scent from the barn, echoing the sound he had heard at the attic door. The trunk shifting, or something inside it. By breakfast, Cassian's nerves had sharpened into a quiet, vibrating tension. Jonah looked just as restless, though he concealed it behind an air of defiance. Silas sat at the head of the table, unreadable except for the stiffness in his posture. His hands did not tremble, but they hovered too long above his utensils, as though he were fighting the urge to clench them. Mrs. Harrow poured coffee with a trembling wrist. "Another rough night?" Jonah asked, too casually. Silas didn't look up. "The farm demands attention. Dawn comes early." "But you weren't in the fields," Jonah replied. Cassian shot him a warning glance, but the comment had already landed. Silas slowly raised his eyes, their darkness heavy as a storm lowering itself. "I walk my land," he said. "Is that a crime now?" Jonah leaned back. "Depends on what you're walking toward." A knife stilled in Silas's hand. Cassian caught the faintest flicker, the same shadowed flicker he'd seen in the attic when Silas touched the trunk. Not anger. Fear disguised as authority. Mrs. Harrow's voice broke the tension. "Please, not at the table." Silas rose abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. "The table is where men speak plainly, but we will speak of nothing today. I have business in town." Jonah opened his mouth, but Silas cut him off. "And the attic remains forbidden." He left without another word. By late afternoon, Jonah had slipped away, leaving Cassian alone with his mother in the parlor. She stitched in silence, the clock ticking like a heartbeat behind her. Cassian watched her needle move, the thread pulling taut through pale fabric. "Mother," he said softly, "what do you know about the trunk?" Her needle paused. "Just once, but long enough. I know it frightens your father," she breathed. "And a man like him does not fear easily." Cassian waited, sensing she was choosing her words carefully. "When your father was young," she continued, "he was different. Kinder, perhaps. More uncertain of himself. He inherited the land after your grandfather's death. A sudden death, one that left him with responsibilities he was not prepared for. He made decisions quickly, some too quickly, and afterward, he stopped speaking of that time entirely." "The trunk belonged to him then?" Cassian asked. "No," she whispered. "It belonged to someone else." Before Cassian could press further, a soft knock echoed from the doorway. Ruth again, her expression tense. "Mr. Cassian," she said. "Old Marcus is requesting to speak with you and your brother. Says it's important." Marcus, the eldest of the enslaved men on the property, older than even Silas, his memory a living archive of the Harrow land. Jonah must have already gone to him. Cassian followed Ruth outside across the yard to the small shed where Marcus repaired tools. The air smelled of oil and cedar shavings. Jonah stood with arms crossed, listening intently as Marcus leaned on his workbench. "I ain't supposed to meddle in family business," Marcus said, "but some things been buried too long. And that trunk, I seen it before." Cassian stepped closer. "When?" Marcus's eyes clouded with something like sorrow. "The night your grandfather died." A chill crept up Cassian's spine. "Your father came back from the woods carrying that trunk in his own hands. Looked pale as moonlight. Told everyone it was not to be touched, ever. Folks were scared enough not to question him. But the next morning, your grandfather was found dead in the root cellar. Cassian's breath hitched. Was there a connection? Marcus hesitated. I never saw inside that box, but I seen the way your father guarded it, like it held something that could undo him. Jonah muttered. So father's been lying for decades. Marcus lowered his voice. Boys, there's things a man can hide from other people, but not from himself. That trunk been talking to him all these years. Cassian felt something hollow open inside him. The sound in the attic last night, the metallic scrape, returned to him with chilling clarity. Marcus, Cassian whispered. Did anyone else know about the trunk? Marcus nodded slowly. One person. A woman. But she ain't been seen since that very same night. The room seemed to darken. Cassian swallowed. What was her name? Marcus looked toward the open door, as though expecting someone or something might be listening. I can tell you, he murmured, but not here. Before he could speak another word, the shed door creaked, slow, deliberate. Cassian turned. Silas Harrow stood in the doorway. But it wasn't the anger in his eyes that froze Cassian's blood. It was the fear, raw, exposed and fixed not on Marcus or his sons, but on something behind them, as though the past had entered the room with its own silent steps. Silas didn't speak at first. He simply stood there blocking the doorway of Marcus's shed, his breath shallow, his gaze unfixed, hovering somewhere beyond Cassian's shoulder, as if the air itself carried a memory he'd spent half a lifetime outrunning. Dust motes spiraled lazily in the shaft of sunlight behind him, and the scent of oil and cedar tightened into something brittle, something expectant. Marcus straightened slowly. Jonah didn't move at all. Cassian felt the weight of his father's silence pressing on the room. Finally, Silas's voice broke through, thin, strained, nothing like the commanding tone that once held the entire property in place. Come with me, he said. Both of you. Jonah clicked his tongue. No, we're finished being ordered around. Silas blinked, and for a moment Cassian thought he might lash out. Instead, his shoulders sagged. No, Silas murmured. You're not finished. Not until you understand. Cassian and Jonah exchanged a look, confusion mixed with a reluctant curiosity, and followed him out. Marcus remained behind, though his eyes followed them with quiet warning. Silas walked them across the yard, past the barn, past the fields shimmering gold under the late afternoon sun, toward the main house. At the porch steps he paused. I never wanted you near it, he said, not turning around. Because once you open something, you cannot shut it again. Jonah crossed his arms. So what's inside the trunk, Father? Silas didn't answer. He climbed the steps, his boots dragging as though each one carried the weight of decades. Inside, the house felt colder. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the hallway, as though the walls themselves recoiled from what was coming. Silas led them up the stairs without speaking, his hand trembling slightly along the banister. Cassian noticed. Jonah pretended not to. At the attic door, Silas paused again. You will not speak of what you see, he said. Not outside this family, not even to your mother. Jonah scoffed. Cassian said nothing. Silas opened the door. The attic smelled of dust and old wood, but there was another scent now. Something faint, metallic, almost sweet. It threaded through the air like a warning. The trunk sat where Silas had dragged it days earlier, positioned beneath the window where pale light settled across its iron surface. Silas stepped toward it slowly as if approaching an altar. I brought this into the house the night my father died, he said, and I swore it would never be opened again. Jonah's eyes narrowed. But why was it sealed in the first place? Silas sank to his knees beside the trunk. His hand hovered over the lock. Because it contains the only thing I have ever feared, he whispered. He produced a small iron key, rusted, bent at one end. Cassian had never seen it before. Jonah's breath caught. Silas hesitated. Then he inserted the key. The lock resisted, groaning in protest, then snapped open with a sound that cracked through the attic like a bone breaking. Silas exhaled shakily. Stand back. But the brothers did not. He lifted the lid. Inside lay a collection of objects so intimate, so out of place in the Harrow estate. They felt like artifacts from another life. Bundles of letters tied with faded ribbon. A woman's brooch, tarnished but delicate. A lock of hair, dark auburn, sealed in glass. A small ledger with no Harrow name on it. A silver locket containing a portrait too smudged to identify. Jonah leaned in. These belonged to her. Silas flinched. Do not assume what you do not know. But Cassian saw it in his father's eyes. The recognition, the ache. She was real, Cassian whispered. The woman Marcus mentioned. Silas closed his eyes. She should have stayed buried. Jonah sifted through the stack of letters, unfolding one at random. Silas reached out as though to stop him, but too late. Jonah read quietly, his voice tightening. It's addressed to you. Silas's jaw clenched. Cassian glanced at the other objects. A dried sprig of wild mint. A torn fabric scrap, stained dark at one end. A deed to a small parcel of land Cassian had never heard of. Father, Cassian said, this is not the trunk of a stranger. This is someone you... Silas slammed the lid shut, startling both sons. But before he could speak, a thin paper envelope slid out from beneath the letters and drifted onto the floor. Cassian bent to pick it up. His name was written on the front. Not Jonah's. Not Silas's. His. The handwriting was elegant, distinctly feminine, and utterly unfamiliar. Cassian looked up slowly, heart pounding. Who wrote this? He asked. Silas swallowed hard. Someone who should never have known your name. Jonah stepped forward. Open it. Cassian slipped a finger beneath the seal. Inside, something soft and fragile brushed his fingertips. And when he drew it into the light, Silas staggered backward. Because the object Cassian held did not belong to him, yet somehow bore the unmistakable mark of a Harrow, a mark that should not have existed at all. Cassian stared at it, realizing that whatever truth lay inside the trunk, this envelope had been left for him alone, and for a reason his father feared too much to speak. The attic seemed to shrink around them as Cassian held the object between his fingers, a small strip of linen soft from years of confinement, marked with a stitched initial, H, embroidered in deep indigo thread. The stitching was unmistakably precise, almost delicate. It mirrored the monogram style Mrs. Harrow used for her children's garments when they were infants, except Cassian had never worn anything like it, and neither had Jonah. Silas stared at it as though it were a ghost. That should not exist, he whispered, voice cracking under the weight of something long suppressed. It was destroyed. I destroyed it. Jonah stepped closer. Whose was it? Silas closed his eyes. Your brother's. For a moment, neither Cassian nor Jonah breathed. The air in the attic thickened, laden with dust and truth settling after years of silence. Jonah's voice dropped to a rasp. We don't have another brother. Silas's reply was barely audible. You did. Cassian felt the floor shift beneath him. Explain. Silas looked older suddenly. Older than the land he commanded. Older than the principles that had shaped him into the man he pretended to be. He sank against the trunk, its iron surface scraping the floorboards. She came to the property the year before your mother conceived you, Cassian, he began. A woman from the hills, half Cherokee, half Irish, too proud for her own safety, too clever to remain unnoticed. His eyes drifted to the locket resting inside the trunk. Her name was Maeve. Cassian felt the letters inside the envelope trembling in his grip. Silas continued. She worked here only a short time, helping in the orchards. But he faltered. I was not the man I should have been. And she paid the price for my weakness. Jonah's jaw tightened. What did you do to her? Silas's breath turned unsteady. She bore me a son. The room fractured into stillness. Cassian's pulse thundered in his ears. You hit him, Jonah said flatly. I tried to protect him. Silas insisted, but his voice betrayed him. He was born marked. By blood, by heritage, by the tensions that ruled this land. There were men who would have killed him simply for existing. Men who wanted a Harrow heir untouched by scandal. Men who... Men you worked with, Jonah said. Silas didn't deny it. Cassian felt a whisper of Maeve's presence in the attic. Soft, resilient, defiant. Her letters, her brooch, the locket. They were tokens of a life denied the dignity of truth. What happened to the child? Cassian asked, though dread already coiled inside him. Silas pressed his hands to his face. I sent Maeve away with him. I arranged for land, money, passage. But the night they were to leave, his hands shook. My father confronted her. He did not believe the child deserved a place in the world. He wanted the scandal silenced forever. Jonah's lips curled into something close to horror. Did he kill them? Silas's eyes filled, a raw grief no one had ever seen from him. No. He tried to take the child. Maeve resisted. They struggled. I found them in the root cellar. His voice broke. My father dead, Maeve dying, and the child gone. Cassian swallowed. Gone? Taken? Silas whispered. By someone who feared what he represented. I searched for years. I looked everywhere, but no trail remained. All I ever had were the things she left behind. His hand brushed the trunk. I sealed them away. To spare myself. To spare your mother. To keep the land stable. To forget. Jonah's voice shook with rage. You don't get to erase a life. No, Silas murmured. But I tried. Cassian opened the envelope at last. Inside were several folded papers, Maeve's handwriting sweeping and sure. The first note was addressed to him. If you are reading this, then Silas has failed to bury me. Cassian's throat tightened. Your brother lived, and if fate is kind, he still does. There is one place your father never dared look. Go there, if you wish to know what remains of him. A location was written beneath it, deep in the hills bordering Cherokee land. Jonah leaned over Cassian's shoulder. We're going. Silas staggered to his feet. You don't understand. Whoever took him, whoever hid him, may still be alive, and they will not welcome questions. But Cassian wasn't listening anymore. His pulse throbbed with something fierce and unfamiliar. Purpose. A brother. A life stolen. A truth demanding to be reclaimed. He folded the note and looked at Jonah. Jonah nodded once. Behind them, the attic seemed to breathe, a slow exhale of decades releasing their hold. But as Cassian turned toward the door, a faint sound rose from the trunk again. Soft, metallic, rhythmic, as though something inside shifted with intention, or someone had opened it before them, and left something behind. Something still waiting. Cassian paused, sensing the past was not done with them. Not yet. If this story pulled you in, don't forget to leave a comment sharing your theories, subscribe to the channel for more hidden American history, hit the like button to support the series, and share this video with someone who loves dark, forgotten stories.